Welcome to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. It's been a busy week for us here at the BYP studio. I've had a lot of podcasts with friends and neighbors, and it's conference weekend starting tomorrow. I have been listening to, and excuse me, the nose is running, listening to and learning from the Judaic Studies University about Joseph Smith and the Kabbalah from a Jewish Kabbalist perspective. Most interesting stuff. I will be making some videos and response videos of that without question. And I'm getting ready for conference. I'm going to try to listen to as much of it as I can. We do have company coming, so it'll be a busy weekend for me this weekend. I also have my own live show Sunday night, 6 p.m. And I do believe I'm going to be doing a live session with Steve Pinecker with Mormon Book Review. That could be tomorrow, late afternoon after conference. So that could be something worth watching. Well, it not could be, it will be, but that's something else that's in the works. So it's been a busy week, but Mormonish Landon Lofi. He's going to slap me. He'll give me that old Marine smackdown. Bam, 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 bam. That's okay. I've got Jeet Kune. I'm not scared of you, Landon. Besides, you're too good a friend. I wouldn't fight you anyway. And the lovely Rebecca Biblioteca. Now, they had Cultural Hall with them. And they had a splendid podcast that I would have loved to have co-hosted with them because I also have ideas. So now you're going to get the BYP take on just some of their podcasts. It was a 2.5-hour massive podcast, fantastic materials. Go watch that. But here's the BYP take on that as well. On the theme, do Mormons worship the prophet? And I know this sounds like it's an anti-Mormon diatribe, but what do we do when we come across faithful members of the church who are also saying, you know, we're overdoing this Russell M. Nelson stuff quite a bit, and it's not a good look. When the faithful begin to see the shift away from Jesus to his prophet, then you've got a problem. And so I want to address a few of the points that Mormonish addresses, put my 2 cents worth in. Let's get going, and I will show you what I am talking about. I will share the screen here. But that's not why we're here tonight.
No, that's not why we're here. In fact, we're talking about the opposite of a stealth, covert, under the radar, no one knows, groundbreaking.
When you shop with the Ship app, your schedule is the only schedule that matters.
Catch me with an
in every delivery.
Let's go explore rugged CRV from Honda. ABB.com's.
All right.
If we pull our slides up, we're talking about the opposite of something that's stealth and covert. We are talking about something that's so ostentatious, so in your face. We're talking about prophet worship. And we're, in this case, prophet, right? Because it could be a little of both. I mean, we could go back and forth.
LDS worship both. Yes,
exactly.
Prophets and prophets, and a prophet that makes a prophet. That's a double. It's like a double rainbow.
It's like a double
all the way.
But that is a good point because, and this is unfortunate for the church, it is to the point now to where we know they worship the money. There's no way they would hoard. Now, I've heard recent figures, and this is so remarkable because when the SEC fined them for illegally not reporting their actual holdings, and that was a federal offense, that was against the law. I know many Mormons try to say it wasn't. No, we've got SEC experts who've shown us the receipts. We've got the evidence. But Now I've heard that instead of 150 billion, it's up to 250 billion. And the widow's mite is taking care of all the financials and the rigmarole and the shady works of the Mormons and their lawyers that they have an army of now. They have to. They're not a church. They're a corporation. I mean, they're being run by lawyers. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to do this response with Mormonish, because Landon brings up a phenomenal point here that is quite interesting about lawyers. I hope I didn't skip it. I'm in the later part of the show. If I did, I'll go back and find it for you. So let's keep going and see what else these guys have.
Well, and the whole idea for this podcast came about because of a post that I saw on Faithful social media from a Faithful member, and we'll kind of read that. But the idea is concern. Do you think we're acting now in the church like we worship the prophet? Because this person had been getting some pushback, and I thought, conference is coming up. It's coming up this weekend, and I don't know. It seems to me that prophet worship has kind of taken on a life of its own. Have you noticed anything trending that way, Culch?
Yeah, every time I get on social media, it's President Nelson this and President Nelson that. So it's yeah.
And
now this is a really important point that I do want to bring up, and I have not watched this entire podcast yet. I've been about 3/4 of the way through it. And it dawned on me, I want to make some points here. Not only is Cultural Hall correct here, that everything is all about President Nelson, but the curriculum of the church, the Come Follow Me curriculum, the majority of quotes that you are reading now is from what President Nelson has spoken. They're not doing scripture studies. It's not about Jesus's teachings. It's about what President Nelson says, or one of the Quorum of the 12. It's all about the church leadership today and yesteryear and the year before that and the year before that, etc. And they've slowly, insidiously slipped the noose of the arm of flesh around, and it's tightened. And they've even got Mormons convinced now that it's not good to read outside literature. We have all the answers. Just come to our website. Forget social media. They warn you against social media. I am in complete agreement with them when they say there is a lot of crap on social media, but a lot of that crap is not coming from people who used to be Mormons. Yeah, I know the Mormons are going to disagree with me. I've got evidence. My own podcast, for instance, we're deep diving into the materials that the church won't. And of course, because we don't have a pre-selected set of scriptures only used in order to present the smooth running, consistent Mormon narrative showing that all is well in Zion. The scriptures support us. We are completely in line with all of the former Mormon prophets. We worship Jesus Christ of the Bible, etc. This narrative that they present only through, say, Russell Nelson, Henry Eyring, Dallin Oaks, but very, very precious little actual Bible scriptures. They'll use the Book of Mormon quite a bit. Very little bit about Jesus's teachings, etc. In fact, their biggest celebration in Mormonism, as we will see, is Russell Nelson's birthday, not Jesus's. And this is starting to shock the faithful members. Let's keep going. This is a really important point they bring up. Watch what he says about Russell Nelson's language here. This is fascinating.
unlike the Cody groundbreaking ceremony, I mean, they were counting down to this birthday for like, well, they started on what, his 95th birthday that they had the huge shindig, and
been counting for 5 years.
And then they've been counting for 5 years to this one. They had a big card signing ceremony month before, 2 months before.
Yeah, there's a whole trajectory for the birthday that we're going to go into at the end of toward the end of the presentation. So, Landon, do you want to read the definition of worship?
It's a transitive verb, to honor or show reverence for as a divine being or supernatural power, or two, to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. Celebrity worship by her fans. So I don't think there can be any question when you read these that it falls under that. It's definitely extravagant respect that is shown to the public.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's interesting because I think there's worship of the position, a prophet, a role. And then within that, there's worship of the person. And
I want to also here pause and just cast our minds back for just a few former prophets. Howard W. Hunter. Do you recall any birthday celebration at all for Howard W. Hunter? No. For Marion G. Romney, for any of the apostles, for Spencer W. Kimball, for Joseph Fielding Smith. I remember when Joseph Fielding Smith was prophet. Do you remember any birthdays for Ezra Taft Benson, the likes that we're seeing with Russell M. Nelson? No, you don't. They have turned it up to truly extravagant devotion, and what we will witness in this podcast is nothing short of astonishing, because we will see the physical brainwashing in action. And I'm not comfortable when I use that word. There is no other word to describe what we're about to see, you guys. This is amazing. So let's keep our eye on the prize. Let's keep going.
I think some prophets who have stronger personalities and maybe sort of encourage a little more, it just goes off the chart because they're already worshiping the position of prophet. Our church has a prophet. But then to add that on top of that, a charismatic or narcissistic, however you want to look at it, actual person in that role, it's just like a double whammy, like a double rainbow. What do you think about that, Colt?
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I think Nelson is an interesting person to fill that role because, in my opinion, and people may disagree, the man has quite an ego. When you've been a surgeon and you've held people's life in the palm of your hand, literally, you have a God complex. And he does. And you see that in the way that he runs the church and the way that he's fulfilled his office.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And this picture that I chose to show, it's fairly well known. It was only up in the church news just online briefly, and then they took it down. But it lives forever, of course, in print. This is a picture of the print. And of course, his arm, everybody made the comparison. He looks like the Christus,
Jesus.
Right? He's got his arms out. He's got the white suit. It's an interesting look, I think. And I think there's a reason they took it down so quickly from the
Now, that's a sage observation of the body language. We never once witnessed the truly humble Spencer W. Kimball ever walk or act like this. Not once. Not ever. We certainly never saw Harold B. Lee act like this. We certainly never saw Ezra Taft Benson act like this. So this isn't just disgruntled anti-Mormons acting anti-Mormon. This is a sage observation of what is actually happening in front of our eyes. And the faithful Mormons are beginning to recognize that something's off kilter. Very remarkably interesting. Let's keep going. Oh, I wanted to do this one. You don't want to see me. You want to see this. Oh, well, that doesn't change much, does it? Well, yeah, that'll work. Okay, here we go. Here we go. That'll work. I'll leave it there.
The church newsroom.
In his defense, I've seen him walk out to congregations that he was visiting, and he does that kind of arms out pose. So I think it was just a bit
Here
of
I am. Here I am.
Yeah, his shtick. But I mean, do the rest of us walk like that when we enter a room? Maybe we should start. Hello,
but we're not
I'm
prophets,
here.
right?
Oh, my fans.
That's interesting. All right, let's go to our next slide, and we're going to dive in. And like I said, this came from a question that I found on Faithful social media. Is it a bad look? So this person said, how do I explain that we're not a person worshiping cult on the president's birthday? And the person said, I'm trying to explain to folks that we worship Christ and that the prophet president is simply a title for the president of the church. However, the person I'm talking to keeps linking in the church's social media, which is all about the prophet and celebrating his birthday. I'll be honest, it's not a great look. And then later on, they said, or we've all heard the questions, been accused of it, and or even wondered about it ourselves. When I was accused of it by my Baptist friends while in high school, I often got defensive and denied it. As I got older, though, certain practices started to stand out to me as problematic, even as a faithful Mormon. And I think it's true. Like this person, their friend showing them social media could have pulled up anything days before President Nelson's birthday, and there was a clock ticking down to his birthday right there on the church's official website. So I can understand why people would be confused and why this faithful member would say, that looks so great on the front page of the official church's news page. There's not Christ. There's a count.
We focus on Christ, is what they say, except when Russell M. Nelson is here. And then we focus on him. I mean, look at the lengths they go. A clock counting down. Now, I get it. 100 years old is impressive, and it's worth celebrating. Absolutely. But counting down for the last 5 years? Come on. Really? Yeah, we're not done yet. This does get worse from the faithful Mormon point of view. Pretty amazing.
Countdown to our dear leaders' birthday. So do you guys think Cults First and then Landon, is this person off base, or even a faithful Mormon is going, how do I explain this?
No, this is someone who's actually like opened their eyes halfway and are seeing what's going on. If you're in the church and you're really in it, you hear these accusations and you're like, no, he's just our prophet. He's a great man. We love him. We want to celebrate him. But if you're outside looking in, it is so blatantly like hero worship. And Nelson embraces it. And I wonder how much of it is him kind of driving some of it, or if it's just people eager to please him, and that's why, or a combination.
Eager to please him. Why would people be eager to please the prophet? There's the arm of flesh. Eager to please him is a misplacement of faith and love. And I get it. Yeah, love your fellow men, love your neighbors, yourself. I get all that, but that's not the first one to love greatly. The first one is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, might, mind, and strength. So we're not being nitpicky. We are observing the evidence. And the evidence from the church's own website is unmistakably crystal clear. These people have a misguided allegiance. I suspect, and the reason I wanted to do my BYP response to my dear friends at Mormonish is because we are going to see a lot more emulation of Russell Nelson tomorrow and Sunday when conference is here. Let's keep going. They've got a few more items, and then I'll close out.
Combination of the two.
Combination. Yep, I think so.
I think it's a combination of the two, because when you have somebody who wants it and everybody wants to please him, the two go hand in hand, and it just goes over the top, which is exactly what we seem to be seeing. I wonder if I don't remember the church having a countdown clock to Christmas, which is when we celebrate Jesus's birthday
or Easter.
Or sign the world's biggest card signing happy birthday to Jesus, so that Jesus is in the world Guinness Book of World Record instead of President Nelson. We don't see that. Or Easter for the resurrection, or his actual birthday, as we're told, April 6th is his real birthday. We don't. In fact, it's just been in recent years that the church has even celebrated Christmas. Because why? We don't make pomp and ceremony out of sacred things. But the prophet's birthday, hey, we got to have a big shindig with balloons and cake and singing and everything else. So evidently, it's not that sacred of a calling that we treat that way.
Yeah, everyone loves a good piece of cake. I know I do.
That's true.
So,
Yeah, well,
and I did hear anecdotally by perusing social media that a lot of LDS people did celebrate President Nelson's birthday with cake in their home.
I saw that.
With treats. I mean, they're literally at home singing to him, celebrating having a birthday with their kids, and helping them all worship or celebrate President Nelson. So
yeah, you've
interesting.
got to think, are they doing that for the President of the United States birthday? Are they doing that for other people's birthday? Why do it for him? And it's because they want to teach their children, you must obey this man at any cost. That's the reason they're teaching that.
And it is the modern prophets who teach that. Jesus never taught that. Jesus taught, come unto me, my yoke is light, my burden is light. Something's misplaced here. We're seeing the evidence of what that is. Very interesting. Let's keep going.
So
yep, and we're going to go into some specifics. When I started looking for specifics, oh my goodness, boy, did I find a lot. Let's see, why don't Landon and Colt trade off reading these? You can start, Landon. These are some answers that I got from that same social media post where the person asked, how do I explain this? These are some faithful answers, some things that they're saying. You can look at it this way. Why don't you read the first, Landon, and then we'll switch back and forth with you and Colt.
we love our general authorities and are grateful we have a prophet. They are good leaders and role models in a world where those things can seem rare at times. Yes, I get it. Revering leaders is not something U.S. culture in general values or understands. Too many bad leaders in the world's history. But those were bad people. Our own prophet will never be an evil dictator. He doesn't have the power, for one thing. And there is D&C 121 telling us if someone abuses their priesthood, then their priesthood authority becomes null. Personally, I wish we weren't.
Culture, read the next one.
Okay.
All right. Personally, I wish we weren't putting so much emphasis on it from a PR standpoint. But if the Pope was turning 100, Catholics would be doing the same thing. The most prominent leader in the church is turning 100. It doesn't seem that out of the blue that we'd have a birthday for him. But I get the sentiment that it can appear weird that we're putting such an emphasis on it.
Yeah, so these are faithful answers.
It's worse than looking weird, though. This is apostate. You are worshiping a false god. You are following the arm of flesh. That is, by every Mormon definition, apostasy.
Even they're going,
Yeah. And of course, it might not be weird that the Catholic Pope would have a birthday party, but, the Catholic Church is the whore of all the earth. We'd expect that from them, according to Bruce R. McConkie and Mormon doctrine. That is. And so, I kind of take that with a grain of salt there.
And we've also had a Pope retire early.
That's exactly right.
In the LDS
and we also had a birthday party when he turned 95 as well. So that kind of shoots that he's turning 100 is the reason for it. To be blunt, it's a fantastic look. If we were being honest about the value of a prophet and appropriately admired him like you might admire any great man, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, etc., it would look like how we admire the current president of the church. Don't cast your pearls before swine.
So this person wants more, even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those kind of responses, they make me sick, but at the same time, it's like, man, they are all in, and you got to kind of respect it.
That's right. I wonder what their children are being taught, right? Oh, there's that George Washington, Abraham something, but President Nelson.
All right, that we're celebrating that our leader turned 100. It doesn't happen very often. If they say that in and of itself looks culty, I think they've already decided we're culty and are now just trying to look for things to reinforce that view.
Mormons get offended when you call it a cult. And yet they're aware that what they do with the white handkerchief celebration a few years back, where Dallin Oaks was going right when everyone else was going left. I made a big cartoon about that years ago. If you're doing stuff that looks like a cult and you don't like being called a cult, then stop acting like a cult. Become a Church of Jesus Christ again. Just a suggestion. Let's keep looking.
Okay. Yeah, so there was a variety of responses, but most people weren't over the top, like, "Hail, dear leader," and most people were like, "Yeah, people don't understand," and just kind of keeping their culture a little separate, saying, "Yeah, we're in, but not of the world. We do things a little bit differently." So, but like you said, at least some eyes are opening and they're going, I wonder about this. So,
and again, it happened when he was 95. So when they say it doesn't happen that often, it appears it happens every about 5 years. And if he dies, how old is President Oaks?
90. He's like 94,
93, 94. So we're going to have another big party when he turns 95, right?
If he makes it,
we gotta have one for him when he's 95. So it looks like it's going to happen every couple of years at the aging rate that if we have it at 95 and 100, we'll be having one every couple of years.
Well, and President Nelson could reach 105. I can't even imagine what that birthday blowout would look like. So, as they say, though, your first birthday is very much like your last. You're bald. You don't recognize anyone at your party. You have no teeth, so you can't eat, and you're wearing a diaper. This is what they say. I actually heard that joke from someone in a care center where my parents were being taken care of. So, which I thought was cute.
You can't argue with it. That's why it's funny.
I can't argue it. Yeah, they would know. So I thought that's it. That's exactly it. So, all right. So let's talk about just some of the specifics. Do prophets have a God complex, or does the role of the prophet just lend itself to sort of a God complex? Because again, it's a role and then it's an individual person fulfilling that role. So sometimes a lot of distinction there, sometimes not.
Now, I want to say, and I recognize that this really could bother Mormons. God complex. Now you really are just being critics. You don't like it. You don't like them, etc. There is no God complex. But hear them out. This was remarkably eye-opening to me personally. A God complex is what every world leader ends up having, and Russell Nelson fits right in there with all those before him who had God complexes. You don't get to exempt him when he is doing everything the God complexed humans are also doing. This is quite astonishing. Very interesting how they found this.
There's a quote from Teachings of the Presidents of the Church, Wilford Woodruff, which says, "The Lord will never permit me or any other man who stands as president of the church to lead you astray. It is not in the program. It is not in the mind of God. If I were to attempt that, the Lord would remove me out of my place." So really the only way a prophet can be removed is to die. And so I have to ask, what did Harold B. Lee and Howard W. Hunter do? Right? Because I think Howard W. Hunter was only in for 9 months before he was removed. And President Lee was only in, I believe, for 17 months. Anyway, very, very short terms. And they weren't necessarily older. You know, it was kind of unexpected, especially Howard W. Hunter. And I liked him. I really liked him as a prophet. So, but it is interesting, the idea that, you know, we can't lead you astray, or God will literally smite us down. And I was thinking, okay, this is kind of an older teach. I haven't heard this a lot recently, but then Culch pointed out this video I'd forgotten about. Let's go to the next screen where we hear this reiterated again. So this is President Nelson joined by some primary children and being interviewed. And there were a lot of questions.
And of course, they will focus on the very young, immature, not able to critically think children in order to indoctrinate them in this fundamentally false doctrine. I love how Landon takes this thing apart. This is gold. Let's watch.
From this woman, I can't remember her name now, put to the kids prior to this, but I kind of cut it down to the relevant part. So let's watch this for a second here.
This in of itself is quite culty, just the way she presents this.
Exactly.
As you can tell,
and then
I
the
was
stupid
not created by
commercials.
GoDaddy Arrow. It uses.
Oh, there we go.
Any other thoughts? Why do you follow the prophet? Why is that important? Yes, Nathan.
So it's important because you can follow him, and if you follow him, you can like live in the celestial kingdom, and you'll be happy with your families, and you'll be super happy, and you can live forever.
All church taught, learned answers. You can see this kid doesn't really even hardly understand what he's saying. He's just simply repeating what he's been told to repeat. And that's why they start with them young. If you can get them convinced before they're 10 years old, you own them. That's cult. But that's how they do it.
Forever.
President Nelson, would you ever lead anyone astray?
Oh, no.
That's not what prophets do, is it?
Some of them have said, if the president of the church should ever lead people astray, God would take him away. So I like to stay here. And I won't lead you astray. Do you know what the word prophet means? He speaks for God. And so God won't lead you astray, and the prophet will not lead you astray, because God loves you, and I can tell you that the prophet loves you, and that children like you all over the world. You're just beautiful. Thank you so much for your goodness.
You know, the looks on those kids' faces remind me of when Elder Bednar grabbed that kid. They've all kind of got glassy eyes and they're kind of going, they look a little freaked out. I don't know. But again, there he says it right out loud. I will be removed, which is also kind of scary to say in front of kids. If I ever were try to lead you astray. So this still exists, this idea.
And what does that mean, you're going to be removed? Does that just mean, like you said, are you going to die suddenly, like Lee or Hunter, or is like God legit going to come down and like take you?
Yeah, well, Landon and I were talking about this before about, you know, that is how the next prophet is chosen. The prior prophet dies. So what about all this extreme medical intervention where you know that these brethren who are living decades longer than previous brethren, it's because that they get the top medical care where someone else in their position might not be living as long. So is that ethical? Should you let God choose the prophet by just letting people age naturally and die naturally?
And I'd like to point out on this video where he says, that some prophets have said that they'd be removed. Well, that prophet has been removed because whoever said that isn't here anymore. So every one of those, every single prophet has died. So how do we know if they died as a result of the Lord removing them for leading us astray versus they just died because they were old? I mean, Joseph Smith himself was removed.
People do believe that.
Joseph must have been leading us astray. That could be the argument that you make.
That's powerful. I have never thought on that level yet until I heard Landon tonight. But he's got a spectacular point, because there are church members now who are saying Joseph Smith actually was a true but a fallen prophet. He did lead the church astray in the doctrines of God through the King Follett Discourse, and in his worldly desires and lusts, not only polygamy, but political office, mayor, governor, commander general of the army. He ran for president of the United States, none of which the Lord had ordained him to do or spend his time doing. He only had one gift given to him. According to the revelation, you will have one gift, and that is to translate. And he left that gift and chased after worldly glory. And Joseph Smith was removed. Now, that's an angle on the narrative you won't hear in church, but it's a logical thinking through of this modern false doctrine that the prophet will never lead us astray. Fascinating, and they're not done yet. I had to interject that and say, Landon Brophy just hit a grand slam. I need you folks to be aware of that. That is a very fascinating insight. And I hate to swell his already fat head. I can get away with saying that. He's a good friend of mine, man. We're brothers from another mother. But I would almost dare say he just received a revelation and shared it.
How do we know, they say, how do we know if he's talking as a man or as the prophet? Yeah. How do we know if he's dying because he's being removed or because he's simply being called home? We wouldn't have any way to know. So this whole argument is ridiculous.
It's one you got to pray about it.
That's incredibly powerful. I had never thought through it like that. Landon really helps us open our eyes to an entire new understanding that is actually more reasonable than the one the church has given. Well, job well done, Landon. With that, I think there's just one more item. If not, I will cut it short. But that is a spectacular note to end on, because we're going to be listening to men tomorrow who love to imagine that they won't lead you astray, and they've been doing so since 1829.
We can't worry about it. That's right. It's too much to think about. Just get personal revelation and push forward. It's too complex. All right. So yeah, thanks for sharing that video. That was perfect. And exactly like you just brought up, Landon, speaking as a man or speaking as God's mouthpiece. Landon, do you want to read this? These are, again, just some posts from social media where people were weighing in on this topic, and I thought they had really good points.
We throw God under the bus to defend bad practices of past prophets like racism and polygamy. We can't dare accept that a prophet made a mistake. God must have mandated these evils, so we try hard to justify them. Some prophets and apostles have made it clear that they are not infallible, that they will make mistakes, while others have taught that church leaders will never lead the church astray. God will not allow it.
So yeah, just what you said, Coach, it's incredibly confusing. Do you have any thoughts on the, and I have for our listeners, I have a prophet looking person with two signs. One sign says, God is me, and the other says, speaking as a man. So maybe you hold them up depending on what's happening. I've heard them suggest at conference that maybe there's a sign. You click it on, it says man. Click it on, it says God. I mean, what is the protocol? How do we understand?
You know, the only person who ever really did this was Joseph Smith, because he would say, "Thus saith the Lord."
That's
He would speak in the voice of God.
Yes.
So it was.
And now that revelation has ceased in the church, other than hokey penlight revelations that are truly trivial and meaningless, or else they're so negative consequentials to the family of people who live and believe different, that they've justified eliminating "thus saith the Lord" in order to hide the fact that they don't have revelations anymore. That's leading you astray, in case you didn't know it. So I have spent enough time at this point. That's basically the area I wanted to stop at, to share and thank Mormonish for this fantastic podcast. These are my final pre-conference thoughts that I wish to share with you before the conference in October for 2024, starting tomorrow morning, Saturday, and it will continue on Sunday. So I will be watching as much as I can and share some commentary, not out of bitterness, not out of fear, not out of hate, but out of, quite frankly, mild curiosity to see what they'll say, and out of a hope and a concern that if they do come out as negative, which inevitably occurs, I will be able to have a response to that. And if they do come out over the top, ridiculously phony, faith promoting, I also will be able to respond to that. But one thing I'm quite certain of, I'll be happy to be corrected if it's possible, is that none of the people tomorrow are going to actually prophesy in the name of the Lord about anything, because they are managers, not leaders. Thanks for watching the BYP Responds. Much more coming up as I have time. Have a great conference.